Hi everyone, and welcome back. My name is Marley Sensenhofer, and today I'm presenting my work entitled Role-Playing Identities, Gender Performance in Dungeons & Dragons. I'd like to begin by asking everyone to roll for initiative. Most of you don't know what that means, and that's okay. In reality, I'd like to start with some terms we should get out of the way for ease of understanding. D&D, or Dungeons & Dragons, is filled with language that can seem impenetrable to those who aren't well acquainted with it. Most people have heard of this game due to its skyrocketing popularity in recent years, but many don't recognize the finer points of its terminology. The following are essential words you will need to figure out what I'm talking about today. The Dungeon Master, commonly known as the DM, is the person narrating the story for the other party members. The adventure everyone is playing is called a campaign, which is a continuous story narrated by the DM that can last anywhere from a few sessions to several years. There are some of these that have gone on for decades. An NPC is a non-player character, a character that exists in the world and is played by the DM. Excuse me while I sort out my script here. Not one of the party members. Finally, a class is the D&D equivalent of a job. Essentially, it's what your character is good at and how they can use that to attack their enemies. Shown here are some various things commonly found in the D&D space. The character sheet on the left holds all of the information you need for referencing what your character is good at and not so good at. The DM screen in the center keeps a barrier between the DM and their players so they can't cheat and catch a glimpse of future plans. The image on the right shows my usual setup for session, with my player's handbook, the core rulebook of the game for party members, dice and dice receptacles. I came into this project with 3/4 of a degree in Anthropology and 7 years of D&D experience. And now I have a much better understanding of not only using the system itself, but how the system offers both restrictions and freedoms to its players. Tabletop role-playing games, or TTRPGs, offer a space for players and game masters to create worlds that were before only imagined. Along with this, these spaces provide a venue for many facets of character exploration, especially in regards to gender. Gendered expectations look different across widely varying fictional settings, and many players, specifically members of queer communities, use this as an opportunity to experiment with varying presentations in a safer way than performing them in public. Navigating gendered existence also provides a method of exploring the experiences of those who identify in ways that the player does not, allowing for expansion of understanding of the ways gender is socially and societally constructed. To complete this research, I conducted a series of several casual interviews with students at my university. We discussed everything from how they view their own gender identity, to the characters they play, to the expectations that are put on different people in the TTRPG community. These interviews were enlightening and gave me unique insights into how different people are affected by their experiences in and out of gameplay. I chose to speak mainly to queer and genderqueer individuals, as I was principally interested in studying their experiences. I believe that it is important to mention that I am also part of the queer community, and I am very aware of how sensitive these topics can be, so I made sure to check in with all of them to see what they did and did not want to be made public through this project. Along with the interview methodology, I also conducted several hours of persistent observation, before, during, and after session. This proved to be a situation that was harder to balance than I expected, as being an active player during the game requires you to make decisions that affect the course of the storyline. By integrating yourself into the situation, you are intrinsically somewhat altering events going forward. Acknowledging and understanding this will be key to the future of this work. This image shows what a typical table setup looks like. Thank you to my friends who let me use their hands for this photo. To highlight one of my most revealing experiences, I'd like to share an ethnographic vignette with you all. Please be advised that it does contain graphic content. The 5 of us sit around a low wooden table covered with open players' handbooks and trays filled with dice of every color and material. There is quiet but intense music emanating from the blue speaker in the corner. In the story, we have just come from shutting down a factory in which my character found out some life-changing information about where he and his fellow orphans could have come from. Our dungeon master asks us for a roll, which cues clattering sounds as dice are thrown in various directions. Some of us pass, rolling a number high enough to escape predetermined consequences. Others, myself included, fail by rolling too low of a number, and into the lake of blood we go. In the lake, there is an uncomfortable silence, only broken by the viscous waves slapping against the raft. Bellamy, my character, climbs back onto it with trembling limbs, pushing himself up to safety. He pauses to shake off the bloody water and thinks that the worst is behind him, but then a mist carrying the sharp tang of iron rises around the lake, obscuring everyone's vision. In the mist, there are whispering voices, and they call out to him specifically. Come back, Beatrice. Come home. We miss you. The words hit him like a slap. That is, after all, no longer a name he identifies with. It hasn't been for years now. What right do these spirits have to use it? When these words are spoken, all of us stare at each other with shock. It stings to hear this other name used to refer to Bellamy, as we have all known him as himself for several sessions prior to this. Some of my group members look at me with concern and confusion, almost as if this had happened to me personally in real life. When a group plays together for so long, they become tightly bonded, and it can be hard at times to separate someone's character from them as a person. I think that this was what was at play when this happened. They see me as him, and him as a reflection of myself. When one embodies a character physically, vocally, and mentally for so long, they cannot help but experience overlap between themselves and their characters, and they see each other in their members of their party. Over the last year and a half, I have been playing in a campaign with some fellow college students that is set in a world homebrewed, or not following one of the originally written D&D settings, by our DM. The setting leans heavily into the abjection of horror and fantasy, which sets a perfect backdrop for telling my character's story. The emphasis on bodies performing acts perceived to be unnatural echoes sentiments similar to the arguments of some people against gender transition and generalized queerness. However, this concept has never been brought up in explicit relation to Bellamy, which de-emphasizes its connection to him and reinforces the horrors of the environment, making his transition journey not seem as unnatural in surroundings that are far worse. I play a human wild magic sorcerer by the name of Bellamy Potts, a neurotic, hapless young man that also happens to identify as transgender. This is him, and the surrounding images represent facets of his personality and events in the campaign. In creating Bellamy, I already knew that this was going to be my research topic, and the idea of designing him this way came to me as a way to get first-hand experience with my topic. I've created several characters that do not hold the same identities as I do, but he is the first that I have played over a long period of time, rather than for one-off sessions or short campaigns. Playing him for this long has allowed me to deeply experience the situation of player-character gender difference, and to see how my DM and fellow players interact with him as he grows more comfortable with himself and his identity. The above narrative illustrates the concept of dead naming, in which a trans person is wrongly called by the name they were given at birth and no longer claim as their own. In Bellamy's case, he has strong negative associations with his dead name and decides to stay as far away from it as possible, though this is not how all gender nonconforming and trans people feel about theirs. My group consists of 5 white cisgender college students, many of us queer, at a small private liberal arts university. 2 of them play characters that align with the same gender as the players portraying them. 2 of us, including myself, play characters that embody player-character gender difference, and our DM plays any non-player character or NPC of any gender that is required for the situation at hand. For example, Bellamy's guardian within their caravan is a vaguely humanoid genderless colony of mushroom roots. They played an important role in showing him that it was okay to not fit the set of gendered expectations placed upon him from birth, creating a space where he could practice his identity safely before showing it to everyone else. The other members of my party were also very accepting of him and how he presents himself, which was appreciated by both him and myself, as it was indicative of the environment being a comfortable, accepting place. Bellamy may be a sorcerer, but I would like to pivot now to discuss a tangentially different class, the wizard. When most people conceptualize a wizard in their minds, they automatically default to a person with a long beard and a pointy hat. This person, nearly all of the time, is male, echoing popular characters such as Gandalf or Merlin. Gandalf's up there. When I made my first character, a female human wizard, I was convinced that I had to call her a witch. Popular media had convinced me that since she was a woman, I had to refer to her as something else entirely. In typical fantasy presentation, the wizard presents a thought-provoking dichotomy of gendered embodiments, knowledge and frailty, which are masculinized and feminized in turn. Historically, the holding and dissemination of knowledge has largely been regulated to men in Western culture, thus leading people from these areas to associate masculinity with intelligence and intellectual power. Women, on the other hand, are associated with possessing less physical strength, and the wizard class in D&D is one of, if not the weakest. This contradiction contained within one body defies what is perceived to be normal when carrying out binary gender roles, as both facets are represented, yet not completely. All of this also applies to Bellamy as a sorcerer and most other spellcasters in the D&D system. Most classes can be organized into 3 separate categories: the tanks, the support classes, and the last cannons. Tanks, including classes like barbarians, paladins, and fighters, play the front line of defense in a combat situation. These are characters that will be the strongest and have the capability to take the most damage. They are also often the most stereotypically masculine. Support characters, for example clerics, who are essentially fantasy priests and healers, and druids, masters of nature, are aggressively feminized in their use during combat. They are kept on the back line, as their skills are needed more to repair the tanks and glass cannons than to actually fight themselves. Lastly, glass cannon is a term used to refer to mainly spellcasters, as described by the wizard above. These characters exist in often feminized bodies while containing traditionally masculine knowledge and power, and are often placed in the middle of combat formations, where they can be most protected from the large amounts of damage they are inevitably going to incur. In terms of gender in fantasy settings, more specifically the system of D&D, it is easy to see stratification systems forming, though not in a way that one would typically expect. The tank classes, which are typically performed by men playing male characters, take the lead in battle and oftentimes in strategy as well. Support characters and glass cannon spellcasters are commonly portrayed by women, who are not taken as seriously as their male counterparts and may not have as much input when it comes to whole party decision making. However, I have found that when D&D is played in groups of largely queer and genderqueer people, these strict alignments tend to be much more easily broken and done away with. In the campaign I play in, our tank character is a woman played by a man, which not only reverses what is expected from a tank, but also exhibits player-character gender difference. Transgressing expectations is foundational to the queer community, so it is not surprising to see these structures being broken in a safe, liberatory space such as TTRPG. As the game continues to grow, it provides an explanatory and exploratory outlet for many people, especially queer people, and this is something that we should continue to protect and encourage going forward. Thank you.